Oh, what are young people smoking these days? Hello, my name is Fritz Perls, but I suppose you can call me Fritz. I was born in Berlin in 1893 and had the good fortune of growing up during the Bohemian scene, and I was an active member of Dadaism, an avant-garde movement stressing on art, music, poetry, and all things beautiful that was born out of a disgust for mainstream social, political, and cultural values, and this has influenced me for almost all of my life. Now, I was a heavy smoker of real cigarettes back in my day, so I have no idea what that is. But my current host family has a strict no smoking policy because apparently it makes your cats cough. Despite my family wanting me to go into law to follow in the footsteps of my famous Uncle Hermann Staub, the greatest lawyer in Germany at the time, I decided to attend medical school and also enlisted in the German army in World War I. After the war was over in 1918, I went back and finished my medical degree with an emphasis on neuropsychiatry and became an assistant to Dr. Kurt Goldstein in assisting soldiers suffering from brain trauma. And it is Dr. Goldstein who first opened my eyes to the idea of holistic medicine, which serves as a foundation for Gestalt therapy, a term coined by my wife and I in the 1940s. Speaking of my wife, I married Laura in 1930 after working together at the Frankfurt Psychological Institute, and Laura even had a doctorate in Gestalt psychology. However, just a couple years after our marriage, that bastard Hitler came into power, and we had to flee to South Africa, where we lived for the next decade. It is there that Laura helped me pen my first book, Ego, Hunger, and Aggression, although for some reason Laura was not given credit for any of her contributions when you Americans republished our book in 1947. In 1946, we left South Africa and lived here and there. I was even a psychiatrist aboard a cruise ship before we eventually decided to settle down in Manhattan in 1951. It is there that I met intellectual and author Paul Goodman, as well as psychology professor Ralph Hefferlin. And it is with Goodman that I began working on and finished my second book, Gestalt Therapy, where Hefferlin even penned a chapter because he was my patient. Together, we call ourselves PGH. We co-authored Gestalt Therapy, Excitement, and Growth in the Human Personality. Now, before I get too carried away, you may ask, what is Gestalt therapy? Well, simply put, Gestalt therapy is experiential. I simply ask that my patients experience the present, the here and now, and to be aware of how they are in relation to the environment and social context. I encourage awareness and self-regulation, as well as creative new ideas to think, to live, and to simply be. I place an even greater emphasis on what is being done and felt right now over simply reflecting content. In fact, Gestalt therapy employs the use of mindfulness quite often, something you should all be very familiar with by now, as it helps with perceiving and feelings. Only when we are fully aware of our sensory perception and emotions can we then correctly identify and interpret our experiences. In 1951, Laura and I established the first Gestalt Institute right inside our Manhattan home, and I began traveling across the country and conducting workshops to help spread the word. I found myself eventually settling down in Los Angeles in the 1960s, and I found my way to the Iselin Institute in Big Sur, a place so beautiful I built a house right on its grounds and conducted further workshops there. It is in this place of great beauty that I became interested in Zen and addressed further the importance of keeping awareness of the mind and the body, which is the bread and butter of Gestalt therapy. I am rather famous for my straightforward attitude, I know, and I have a particular nose for sniffing out your bullshit. So if you're smiling like a creep, I will ask you why you're smiling like a creep. What are you feeling in this exact moment as you're smiling? What are you thinking about? Did something happen to make you smile that way? In fact, are you even aware you're smiling that way? If you're tapping your feet, I'm going to make you uncomfortable and ask you why you're tapping your feet. After all, physical behaviors are simply manifestations of whatever unfinished business we may have suppressed. Now, I've only been back from the dead for barely half a day, and I can already tell you young people don't live in the here and now anymore. Look at you all glancing anxiously at your giant block phones waiting for me to stop talking. What happened to being present? You guys aren't living like real people. In order to fully live, you need to not be thinking about the past or living in anticipation of 6 p.m. when you can leave. You must be aware of your physical and emotional needs in the present and engage with the people and environment around you. Don't simply talk at one another. Feel your whole body and being as you're in conversation. How do the colors seem to you? Are you cold, tense, warm, All these things matter. Our bodies and mind are connected, and we need to be aware of our own awareness in order to live like true human beings. And finally, I died in 1970 on March 14th at the age of 76 to all things heart failure, because the lung cancer apparently didn't get me first. And this was a year after I established a Gestalt community on Lake Cauchewan on Vancouver Island in Canada. I'd like to think that I lived a pretty full life, and before I lose you all, I am going to let you all go and pay attention in class.